Hi friends, it's Becky, and it's time for another installment in my Bracelet Bash series. This is a series of videos that I usually do, taking some beads from different bead boxes or bundles, or just some of the things that I've gotten throughout the month, and making the same type of design with all of those different types of beads, so you can see how it might change using smaller beads or other beads, or just give you some inspiration for one of the bead boxes that you might have this month. Or if you are watching the tutorials and you're wishing that you had those beads, maybe you could get some inspiration from this video so that you could look at what you do have and make something similar yourself. Now for this one, I'm doing kind of a hybrid between a bead weaving and a stringing design. I have already made ahead of time some tubes using just spiral peyote stitch, and it leaves a little opening all the way through it that I'm going to be stringing some beading wire through, and then we're going to be adding some beads to that from some of our bead boxes that I've gotten out there. And some of these bead boxes came with some of the seed beads that I used for these, and some of them they had some additional beads that you could purchase separately or something like that, like the Sam's bead box. And so I just looked around at the bead subscriptions and the bundles that I had that had some 11-0 seed beads, or you can do this with 8-0 seed beads, and just made myself some little spirals. And it is a really, once you get going and once you've got it down pat, it's a very relaxing and like Zen sort of thing to be able to make just a little tube with some of the these seed beads. So we're going to be going through some of those. I've already made some. I'm going to make one with you as we do this, but this is the basic design, is that I'm going to have my little peyote tube as half of it. We're going to have a little focal bead, and this is from the Spa Day Sam's bead box. And then there's going to be some other beads along the other side that are going to be strung on there. And we'll get all of those all strung up together and make them pretty, make sure they fit, and then we'll add a little clasp at the bottom, and we'll do that for each of these bracelets that I'm doing. So the first part of this is going to be showing you how to do the bead woven portion. And then the second part of this will be each individual bracelet, and as I make them, I will go over the materials that I'm using from each bead box. I don't want to do that right up front because it will take some time. If there's a specific bracelet that you want to watch being made, you can go ahead and skip to that. I will put the timestamp in the description below so you can skip ahead to that. But let me just go over which boxes I'm going to be using. First is my Adornable Elements box, and you might notice that I have two tubes for this one. And so this one is going to be different from the others because I'm going to be stringing on some 2-hole beads for the other half, these 2-hole pyramid beads from my subscription there. And so it's going to be kind of different, kind of fun. We're going to be doing that one last. And then the next one, I think I'm going in reverse order from the way that I was going to be doing it. Okay, so I guess the second to last one is a bead mix that I got from Danielle Wickes, and some pretty flower pressed beads, and this is what I'm going to be making with this, and we'll get to that closer to the end. And then third from the last, I used 2 colors of the seed beads in order to make my spiral, using some Curated Collections from Beads to Live By. And then I've got some Czech glass beads from the Czech glass bundle that is sold alongside of that. And we'll be putting those together. Again, that's 1, 2, third from last, fourth from last. You might notice this is a little bit skinnier than the other ones. That's because I used 3 colors of the seed beads, and this is that Spa Day from Sam's bead box. And this was some seed beads that were mixed together by Rachel, and I love getting these like every month. There's like so much that you can do with them, like this. Next we've got the TGB Spring Fling French Garden, I think is what it was. This was the bead kit that Softflex put together. And so I'm going to be using this bead mix that I used to make this tube, and then we've got some of the beads that came in that kit that we're going to be stringing along together for that one. Next, more Adornable Elements, because I do get the Seed Bead Beads of the Month subscription, and this one was from April. This one was my May Adornable Elements. This is from my April. I just really loved these colors, and so the beads for that I actually pulled from my stash. I've just got these pressed glass flower beads and this little bird bead, and I just thought I would put these guys together. It's going to be really pretty. And then the first one that we're going to be doing and putting together is the one that we'll be doing the bead weaving on together. And this is a bead mix that came from the Gemstone Orphanage Danielle Wickes Naked Baby box, and so I had already gotten that box and gotten that out, but there's so many beads in that dress-up bag, and so I'm going to be pulling some of the beads that were in there, some of these crystal beads, some of the gemstone beads that were in there, and then this really fun flower focal. So I'm going to be showing you how to make the tube using these seed beads. Let me move these out of the way. For tools, what I'm using for those is a size 12 beading needle for the bead weaving portion. I also have myself a thread burner and some sharp scissors. And then for the stringing and putting together the jewelry part of it, we've got some chain nose pliers, some flush cutters, and my favorite way of crimping my beading wire is using a magical crimper, so I'm going to be using those for all of that. I have some 2x2 crimp tubes that I'm going to be using with my magical crimper, and I have a variety of beading wire that I'll be using. It is the Softflex medium beading wire, and I've just got a selection of colors that I think would go good with the beads that I have chosen for each of my bracelets. So there should be 7 bracelets total. And let me get this sorted out into 4 different colors, and I will meet you right back with a wingspan's worth of 6-pound fireline for the bead weaving portion. Alright, so we're going to be doing our little peyote tube. It's peyote in the round. When you do flat peyote, you usually go through the seed beads in a little way like this where you have some crenellation, and then when you turn, you go back through those beads and you add, where's my, pretty sure I just had these guys. You add a little bead each time you do it, so they pop into place, and then you turn and you do the same thing. When you do it in the round though, you start with 4 beads like this, and then you go through that one and add another bead, go through that, add another bead, go through that 4th one there, add another bead, and you go through and around until you have added all of those beads. Then when you get to that last one, you're going to step up through that next 2 bead, and I'll show it, I'll demonstrate it, and then go and add the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until you're going through and around like that. So you're going to go start with your 4 beads, but then instead of turning around and going back, you're coming up through that bead again, adding another bead, go through that bead again, add another bead, and I'm messing up my already sorted beads there by dropping my guys, add another bead, and it extends through here, and then you go around again like that to that bead that you added at the first for that round. Go in again, add another bead. So it's just going in the round instead of back and forth. That is all it is doing when you do that. Now I like to use different colors for it because it makes it easy to tell where you are in the pattern. It also makes it easy to tell where you need to step up your bead to get to the next round. And you get this fun little barber pulling on your design. You could do it all in one color, but it can be hard to keep track of where you are in that place. So I've got 4 different colors of 11O seed beads. I'm going to scooch in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Got my beading needle threaded. Again, I've got a wingspan's worth of 6-pound fireline on here. And I'm just going to pick up 1 each of these seed beads that I've got here. Bring them down, not to the end of my thread, but I'm going to leave enough thread at the end to be able to put a needle on here and weave that thread in after I've finished making my design. So I'm holding on to that thread here. I've got my beads here. I'm going to take my needle and put it through the first bead that I picked up and added so that it forms a circle. Just a little, almost right angle unit, just like that. And then I'm coming out of this bead here. This was the first one on my list. I'm just going to move from right to left as I go. And one thing to keep in mind when you're using different colors like this, to know which bead to pick up, look at the bead that your thread is coming out of. So I'm coming out of this color A. So I'm going to pick up a color A bead, and so into the next bead, which is my color B bead. See how that just kind of snooks right into place. It's totally okay if it's a little bit loose right now. So since I'm coming out of color B, I'm going to pick that up on my needle and go into the next seed bead. And I'm coming out of color C, so I'll pick up color C and then sew into the next seed bead, which is that white one there at the end. It's my color D. So I'm coming out of that one, and this is how I know when it's time to step up, is I get to the end of my row. So I started here and moved across, and so now when I go to the next seed bead, I'm going to go into both the one that I went through first and the one that I added. So go through 2 at once, and that's how you step up to the next round when you're doing peyote in the round. Now the first few rows are not going to make a tube. Not yet. It will make a tube as we keep going. It's going to sort of pinwheel around a little bit at first, so don't be alarmed if this is not tube shaped initially. Alright, so I'm coming out of color A. So I'm going to pick that up, and because it's not tube shaped, you can't really tell that this is like the crenellation that you get with that. So I'm just going to take that sticky outy one over here on the outside. That is a technical term of my color B. I'm going to go through that one. And see how it's kind of loosey-goosey? That is to be expected because it's not in tube shape yet and we haven't snooked it up or snugged it up as we're doing that. So I'm coming out of color B, pick up color B, and go to the outermost color C bead, go through that one, and then I'm coming out of color C, so I'll pick up a color C and go through the outermost color D. Now that I'm coming out of color D, I'm going to pick up color D, and I'm going to go through not just the outermost color A, but the one before that too. So both color A's, because I'm stepping up. This looks a little bit complicated because it is not in a tube shape yet. But now that I've got this third round, I'm just going to take a little toothpick and put that here in the middle, and then use my fingers to push these up around the middle of this and pull on my thread just to tighten this up and start it forming a little tube. Now, a lot of people find it useful to bead around something like this when they do peyote in the round or tubular peyote like this. I find it to be a little bit fiddly, but especially here at first, you may appreciate having this here. So I'm just going to do another round with this toothpick in the way, and then I'll move it out of the way. So I'm going to pick up, I'm coming out of color A, pick that up, and you see how it's kind of poking up on the top. I've got one of each of color poking up on the top of that. That's that little crenellation. So I'm coming out of color A, pick up color A, go through that sticky uppy, color B, coming out of color B, pick up color B, and go through the sticky uppy, color C. That, coming out of color C, pick up color C, and go through the sticky uppy, color D. Pick up my color D because that's what I'm coming out of. And because I've gone 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to that side, and I'm ready to start over again at the front, when I go through this, see I've got my sticky uppy one, that's the one that I just added. I'm going to go back just one and go through both of them so that I can step up. So I always know that I need to step up when I pick up my color D, and I always know which to pick up by looking at the bead that I'm coming out of. See, now this is the part where it's going to start getting fiddly for me, having this still here. So I'm going to remove my toothpick, pull my thread to tighten this, and I'm going to just roll it a little bit to help them just settle into place a little bit better to make that tube. And I'm going to continue on. And the fun thing about this is that once you've got a rhythm going, and once you've got a familiar, you know, which ones you go into next, and once you know how to read your beading to see where you're going to sew into next. So coming out of that dark green bead, pick up a dark green bead, go through the white bead like this, pick up the white bead and go through the two beads to step up, the two color A's to step up. Sometimes, especially at the beginning, when your thread is a little bit longer, can sometimes get a little tangled. go slow to untangle it if you need to. So I've got my A, B, C, and D sticking up. I'm going to continue on like that all the way around until it is about half of a bracelet length. That's going to be, let me grab a measuring thing, about 3.5 inches. So when it's at that length, I will come back to you and I will show you how to weave in the ends, and then we can start assembling our bracelets using our peyote tube and our other beads that we have. That will be really fun putting them together, but this is a very it's a relaxing kind of thing to be able to get into, just making a little peyote tube like this, putting one bead on at a time, and it's just really satisfying to watch them kind of like snoop right into place when you put them in there like that. So I got to the end of that row, so now I'm going to step up by going through those two color A beads. And I know a lot of these beads that I'm working with right now, they are kind of analogous to each other, but hopefully they're different enough looking that you can tell that it's the color A and not the color D beads that I'm going through there. So I am going to finish making my little spiral with these beads from Gemstone Orphanage, and when I come back I'll have this and we'll put it together and make it into a bracelet. Alright, so once you've got that as long as you want it, and I stopped at about 3.5 inches because it's going to be just part of a bracelet. For that, I have a needle still on my thread, and I'm coming out of the bead that I had stepped up to for the last one. So I'm going to take this down and I'm just going to follow my thread path diagonally through the peyote. And I don't need to pull it tight here. I want to still have that opening so that I can thread my beading wire through here. But I'm going to keep going diagonally through, following the same thread path that we had gone through, well, sort of the same thread path, but just the same one here. Keep going down just a little bit further. I'm weaving in my end, by the way, that's what we're doing here. And then I'm going to change direction, so I'm going to jump from this bead here to this next bead on this next row up, and then start going this way, like that, and following the thread path, going diagonally. Again, down through here. Make sure you don't catch it on some stuff. I don't need to pull it tight when I'm doing this, by the way. And then I'm going to change direction again. I'm coming out of this bead right here. I'm going to jump up here to this one. And then start going diagonally again. And I just want to make sure that I've changed directions at least twice when I'm doing this, and this way you don't have to tie any knots in your work. The change in direction will give enough tension on your thread, even when it's not, you know, super pulled tight. It'll give enough tension on it that the thread won't come loose. And then you can use your thread burner to remove the rest of the excess thread. And do the same thing to the other end. I've already done the end that I left, and that was just the last bit of my thread from making this. Let's scooch out a little bit and let's get started making the bracelet. So I've got some beading wire now. Let me get my focal. It's going to be this fun gemstone flower bead. It's going to be my main focal. And then I've got some gemstone rounds, some crystal lantern shape beads with some faceting on them, some of these crystal disc beads. So let's get these laid out. The way we want them to be. I think, is this how I wanted it? It might have been. I think I might have wanted this one here and this one here for all of that. And then I'm going to be using a clasp. Let's go with a gunmetal color for our clasp. I think that'll look really nice. And I've got some gunmetal color crimps, and then this fluorite color beading wire, and I think that's going to look great. Alright, I will eventually want a couple of jump rings for the closure as well. Alright, time to make my vision a reality. Now you can, if you want to, put some like bead caps or something on the ends for, you know, additional finishing. And I will be doing that on a couple of my projects here that I'm making with y'all. But for this one, I'm going to go ahead and leave it just like it is. I don't think I need to put any bead caps on there. It's going to be just fine where it is, although I do think I want to add a little bead on each end, just something that will cap it off a little bit, something that will set it apart, and I think it's going to be these disc beads, because I think that that is going to be wide enough that it will bump up against it. Yep. That is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have my disc beads on either end. So let's go ahead and start stringing. I'm going to put on my disc bead, and then I'll just feed that wire through until it comes out the other side. And now, there we go. The loop like that. I'm going to put a couple of these 11-0 seed beads on the wire right here where it's coming out of here, just to fill in some of that space. And I think I want the these pearly / white beads on there for that. So let's just put 3 of them on there. That'll give it a little bit, or 2 of them. 2 is fine. I'll give it a little bit of separation before that next bead. It's that lantern bead. And then I'm going to pick up another 11-0, put on my gemstone bead, another 11-0, actually let's do the opaque ones, and then another one of my discs. And I'm just going to separate each of these with an 11-0 and string these on in this order until this is the length that I want it to be. So from here on out, this is just going to be some easy stringing, my friends. So if you've got a project you want to work on while we're doing it, or if you are following along and doing it with me, this part is, again, the stringing part. Alright, I've got my bead on there, and I'm just going to check my size and see where we're at with that. This may be long enough. Let's pull this out and see. I think I need to add one more of my gemstones. So I can grab one of those. I already had an 11-0 on there. I didn't need to add another one. Here we go. Let's add this. And then check our length again. Ah, it's so sparkly. I love that. And that is going to be definitely long enough. So let's make a loop with one end of this wire and a crimp, and then we'll be using jump rings to attach our clasps after I make my loops. Right, and these are just some 2x2 crimp tubes. They work best with the magical crimper. Put that on my wire, bend the wire back, and go through my crimp again, and scooch it so that I've got a little bit of a loop left right there. I'm going to use my magical crimper to do some crimping. If you haven't seen it before, what you want to do is center that crimp in this concavity inside your magical crimper. Make sure it's centered before you squish it. When you do a little squish, it will press down just the corners of your crimp, make it into a little like pillow or ravioli shape. And then you center it again. You turn it at a 90-degree angle. Make sure it's centered before you squish it. And do another smush. And then turn it and smush. Turn it and smush. And keep going around. Make sure it's centered each time. But keep going around at different angles, and what that does is it smooths out those edges, those corners, and leaves you with a nice little ball of crimp, which is why I like this, because it's nice and smooth. You don't need a crimp cover, and it is a very secure crimp. I have never had one come apart on me. Alright, so now I've got my little loop on that end. I'm going to snip off enough wire to be able to crimp on this end. come back down here. Trying to maneuver this so that it's not super tight, so there's some give. There we go. But also so I don't have a super huge loop. There we go. Decent sized loop. I usually on my second one like to make sure that there's some space between my crimp and the last bead. I didn't have to do as much finagling with this one because it just naturally was leaving a little bit of room there for me. And now let's get these scooped up. You can see the amount of beads that I used is about a third of that teeny tiny tube for this whole side of this bracelet here. So let's open and close our jump rings. I'm going to use my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to rope this guy in here to assist with opening and closing my jump rings. Just leave one jump ring on this loop here. And that's so that the lobster clasp has something to clasp onto. Close that up. I like to make sure that my lobster clasps actually work before I attach them. So we're good there. Let's twist that open. Loop it on my wire. Add my clasp. And there we go. It is an asymmetrical bracelet design, but it is so fun to have like a little bit of bead weaving and then some stringing just to finish that off. Absolutely love, love, love this one. So let's move on. I've got this that I used 4 colors from my April Adornable Elements Beads of the Month club. It was a really fun club to get, and so I just made this. This is actually the first tube that I made. I was going to just keep going and make it long enough to make it into a bangle. But I stopped halfway and I was like, you know what? I really, really love this. I'm going to add a little bird here, and then I've got these 4. And I've got these. These were all from my bead stash, by the way. These beads. So pink, and then purple, and then blue, and then yellow again. Like this. These pressed glass flowers. I believe I got them from Bead Box Bargains, actually. In one of their sales. And these are just some little flower beads that are center drilled, and I'm going to use them as little bead caps on either side of my guy right here. So let's pull out some beading wire. I think I'm going to use this pink tourmaline color of beading wire. And I'm probably going to need a little bit of space between these beads. So let me grab my 11-Os from there. I'm pretty sure I've got them right here. I think I might just do the blue ones and not have all 4 of those colors. Yeah, let's just stick with blue. I'm gonna make it easy on myself. My wire ready to go. Going to put on these little curved flowers, and I want the curvy part to be pointing towards my tube, and then we'll just string on this tube. It just goes right through it. It doesn't take very much finagling to get that tube through there. And then again the curved inner curve part towards my tube and my bird. I love a big fat bird. Go. And I'm going to pick up, let's see, how about 1, 2, 3, 4 11-Os, these light blue ones. And we'll string on our big flowers. Do 4 more 11-Os. 1, 2, 3, 4. A lot of times I like odd numbers, so I feel like maybe 5 might be too many, but we'll find out when I check the length at the end of this, if that was too many or not enough, because it's not a problem to take these flower beads off and string 5 or even 6 11-Os between them. All right. Now let's see if this is going to be long enough or if I need a little more space between my flower beads. And I might, because they are bigger beads, and so they may need to be a little bit longer in order to get all the way around for a bracelet. And actually, I think with the 4, that is going to be just about right for me. No, I'm gonna just add that 1 extra 11-O between the flower beads. Just 1 extra, that's all. So it's 5. I do like odd numbers for bead stringing. I don't know why. It feels better to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go. Get these on there. 1, 2. 3, 4, 5. And these had been on there already. That's not going to add too much extra length on there, but I think it will add just enough. 2, 3. Never be afraid to start over if you need to add more beads. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Alright, so I've got 5 on each of those. Yeah, I do like that spacing a little bit better. That does, it makes my brain happy looking at it like that. So let's check our size. Alright, it's going to be perfect. I would like to use some silver crimps. I'm going to make some loops with that. grab a clasp and a couple of jump rings. So I'm going to be closing it up exactly the same way I did the first one, by making my loops with my crimper, going back on my crimp, getting a loop that is neither too big nor too small, just right. And then we center the crimp in our concavity, give it a smush to turn it into a ravioli, change the angle to about a 90-degree angle, make sure that that is also centered, and then just go around different angles until all of the sharp corners and edges have been smoothed out. You're left with a nice little ball of crimp. There you go. And then make sure you leave enough on the other side for crimping. This, the colors on this bracelet just make me so happy. I love them a lot. It is so light and springy. And you know what? We're heading into summertime. Actually, we're in June, but I love nice springy colors any time of year, actually. That the end of my wire is going down into there. I didn't plan that, but I'm not mad about it. Actually, it means that I don't have to snip that off after I get this crimped, but I am going to use my fingernail just to wiggle the crimp a little bit and give myself a little bit of space between that next bead and the crimper, so that this will crimp properly. Okay, make sure it's centered each time before you squeeze it. There we go. So now I've got my loops. Let's make sure things are working and grab my pliers so that I can add my clasp. Look at my little birdie. I'm very happy about this one. This one's been a long time in the making, actually. I started this several weeks ago because it took several weeks for me to make all of my little peyote tubes. It's been a very nice way for me to unwind after work or between making content and something else, just to be able to sit with some of these beads, put them together, and then at the end of it have a pretty little tube that I can string on to a bracelet. And I'm just double checking that size. Oh my gosh, that's perfect. That is going to be perfect. Love, 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 love this. There we go. So pretty. Love those. Let's put that over there with number 1. So that was our second one. There are going to have 7 bracelets by the end of this video. Let's clean up our little mess there. And then this one, this was an interesting one because there are a lot more than just 4 or even 5 different types of beads in here. So when I was doing it, you can see here with the blues, I kind of alternated the different blues when I did my blue stripe, and the same thing with the pinks. And these purple ones are larger than the others, so you see they kind of poke out a little bit more, so it gives it a lot of texture, which is fantastic as a match and mesh to go with our little guy here, which has a lot of texture. So we're going to have this either right up against there, or I think these will probably look really nice between them. I don't know where that came from, but it's just a little star spacer and it fits very well in there. There we go, that's going to work very well. And this will give us a little bead capitude. Let's have this guy on the other side. And then I've got some of these crackle glass purpley friends. And these sort of aqua colored ones. These were just some crystal beads that were in that bead mix in the bead kit, the French Garden Softflex kit. So we've got these guys. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then, alright, if we need to add more, we might stop here. We might add more. We'll see when we get there. And I don't think I need these for this because we're not going to need to extend the size too much on that. Do I want to have a little crystal bead here at the end? I think I do, actually. Let's do one here too. Yep, I like that. I like that a lot. And the beading wire that I want to use for this one is this purple amethyst color. And again, we're just going to be stringing it on and crimping it up exactly the same way that we did the other one. We'll start here with our little end bead, go through the tube. It's going to feed the wire through. When it comes through the other side, I can then string this guy on. There we go. Some nice little caps on that. Some star. That's just to pad that space between the bead cap and this bead here. Or I might not even need these spacers. You know what? I don't want the spacers on there. I'm just going to put this guy right up there next to that crystal, because it does look much better right there next to it without all of that in the way. I love this boho bead. It's so pretty. Alright, let's get these guys strung on. Yeah, but this was a really fun little bead kit. I didn't do a lot with it on camera. They did have some tutorials on the Softflex channel for TGBE for how to do some wire flowers with the wire and beaded flowers, which is really cool actually. And so that is one of the main reasons why that kit had so many seed beads with it, which are fantastic. Fantastic addition. But you know what? You don't always know what to do with seed beads, do you? You might be like, well, what if I wanted to use them in another way? And this is a great way to use a little bead mix. It's just to make yourself a little component that can be part of a bigger part of your designing. So let's see size-wise where we're at. I think we are just about perfect. Right there. Need another crimp. You know, I just had those crimps. There they are. Oop. Need 2 of them for this one. Let's go ahead and bend that back. Put that through. Make a little loop. We're going to center our crimp. Ravioli time. 90-degree angle. Make sure it's centered. And then just go around. Smoothing it out. Once we've got that bit done, I'm going to cut off enough for crimping. Yes, okay. Make another little loop. Did I pull out a, I did not pull out a clasp for this. I can do so though. Sorry, I got distracted by the next steps. It's easy to compress this, by the way, the tube. Okay. Like I said, you can do this with 8-0 seed beads as well. I often like to get 8-0 seed beads with the my Sam's Bead Box because Rachel puts together such great bead mixes most months that go so well with the themes and with the beads. And that's the next one that we'll be doing is the Sam's Bead Box. But let's just get this one finished and we can move on to that one. I love it. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? So we're going to open that, close it up, and then add this clasp to the other side. And here we go. This is bracelet number 3. Let's just pause real quick to look at what we've already done. 1, 2, 3. And let's put together bracelet number 4. And for this one, I did use the 11 seed bead mix from Sam's Bead Box. It is honestly my favorite thing to get one of the bead mixes after I open up my box. But we've got some of these Czech glass beads, some of these like rose beads that are two-toned, some of these super light blue beads. This is from the Spa Day Sam's Bead Box. Then we've got these kiwi beads as well. And I just grabbed a little antique copper clasp to do with that. And this bead mix only had 3 colors in it, so I did 3-color tube. It is a smaller tube, but we're still going to be able to string it on our wire. And that's going to be our focal here. So let's see, I think we're going this way. And the kiwi this way. Kiwi. Alright, so that's going to end up being about like that when we do it. Am I going to have some, yeah, I think I'll do some seed beads as spacers on here. And wire, which wire did I choose for this? I think for this one I'm going for the copper color wire. And I've got some copper crimp tubes. It was the main color of metals for that bead box. I love that Spa Day box. It is so great. So do I want to have a little bead on each end? Let me think about that. I think I do want a bead here on the end because otherwise my crimp tube will get swallowed up by that. So let me grab my box and see which bead I want to put there. Just a little something to make it. Oh no. Here we go. These guys. Like that. I like that. That's going to be pretty great. That was the Spa Day box. Love it. Alright. So let's add these little fire polish beads, the copper color. And then, like I said, we still have that tube shape, but because it is a little bit thinner of a tube, you do have to be a little more careful with how you feed it through. Otherwise, it'll come out of the tube like you just saw. It should be fine. Like that. Let's put on our focal bead. I just really like the way that these look with that. It is so much fun. I'm going to pick up just one of these little copper lined opally colored 11s and then string on my next bead. So we're not going to need a ton of space between these beads because they are fairly large beads, and we've got a few of them on here. The end of this wire is a little bit jagged, so it's having a little bit of trouble getting the 11s up. So I'm just going to cut my wire at a diagonal. That's just going to make it a little bit easier for me to string on my 11s. And getting in the way of my own greatness. Isn't this pretty? I love that. Absolutely love that. And this just shows how great that bead mix was with all of these other beads. It's just perfect with it. But yeah, the bead mixes are not part of the bead subscription. For this one, it didn't come with the box. They're just a design element that you can purchase separately from Sam's Bead Shop. But they are curated to go with the bead box, and so I like to get them every month. Alright, let me check my length. That is one of the most important parts of bracelet design. Checking your length. Ah, so pretty. Also, I like to stop and admire my work. I encourage you to stop and admire your work too when you are making things. Oh yes, that's definitely long enough. See, we did not need all of that extra. Extra. In fact, I might not even need this. But you know what? I'm going to leave it there. And if it's a little loose, I am totally okay with that. Actually, no. Let's take that one off. Because I do have a bigger clasp than the others. So I'm just going to take both of those off. And we're going to add that clasp, and the clasp will take up some of that space. Alright, so clasp. Let's get the crimp crumped. I know that's not the past tense of crimped. But it's fun to say. Now you can crimp with a pliers. It's just flat crimping. I find that that type of crimp fails on me. So I tend to not do flat crimping. Another crimping style is like a taco crimp, which is where it kind of folds the crimp in half and then folds it together, which is a secure and good method for crimping, but it doesn't smooth down those edges, so then you might have a little bit of roughness against your skin while you're wearing it. And so for like a taco crimp, I will actually need to use a crimp cover, if for no other reason than just comfort when you're wearing it. But I find I don't need to do that when I use my magical crimper, which is one of the reasons it's my favorite way of crimping. Just one of them. Alright, let's get this end crimped. And we're just crimping it exactly the same way. Start out with a ravioli, round it out into a meatball, and then snip off our excess. Let's grab some jump rings for my clasp. Swing it open. Put the wire through. Close it up. Swing that open. Put that through. Close it up. We are past. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Forgot to attach this to it. It is not going to work very well as a closure if it is not attached to the bracelet. Pro tip, my friends, pro tip. Alright. So there we go. That is project number 4. We have 3 more projects to finish up. One of them is going to be just a little bit different because we're going to be doing a double strand instead of just a single strand. But that is the last one that we're going to do. So before that, we're going to do some single strands, and it's going to be just great. Alright, now this one I used 2 different colors instead of 4, but when I added it, I did 2 of each color, so I still had 4 beads, and that gives me kind of a thicker stripe barber pulling along there. And this is from the May Beads to Live By Curated Collection, and that is a bead subscription that gives you some seed beads, and it also gives you some 2-hole beads. And I'm not using my 2-hole beads on this, but I am using some of the Czech glass bundle, which is an add-on to that subscription. And so this is, again, something that didn't come with the subscription, but it is something that I really like to get along with it. And so I've got a great big, it looks like an ice cube, basically. Faceted, it's fire polish, but it's like 12 millimeter, 14 millimeter. It's a big guy. It is a big guy. And then we've got these guys here that are just a mix of all of these different colors. You've got this peridot green, you've got this rich brown on one end, and you've got this white stripe. And so I think what I'm going to do is add the yellow one as my little spacers. And for this one, I grabbed some little bead caps out of my stash to go on the ends of my tube, just to make it feel more finished. And I've got some, instead of a, what is it called? Instead of a lobster clasp, I grabbed a toggle clasp here. And let me see, what beading wire am I stringing on? I've got this bone color Softflex. I think that's going to be a good color to go with these guys. And some gold colored crimps. So let me get all of these guys in the way, and then we'll start stringing. I am going to be joining Cassandra Spicer on the Beads to Live By Facebook channel this week on Wednesday. I'm going to be working with more of the May Beads to Live By Curated Collections. I have some ideas that I want to share with y'all for the 2-hole beads that came in that collection. So I hope if you are able to, you can decide to join us. I think that'll be lots of fun. So again, exactly the same as the others. We're going to go ahead and string that tube onto the beading wire, put our little bead caps on the ends, and now I put on my big old focal bead, my ice cube, right there. And I think I want to do, let's do 2 of these 11Os. No, let's do 3. Again, I like odd numbers for spacing on these. So 3 is going to be just fine, I think. Yeah. Let's do 3 11Os. Oh. And I think I need to do the angle cut on this wire. There we go. Yep, that's much faster. So that's 3. And another one of these. One, two, three. Now this month we should see the opening near the beginning of the month for the next round of subscriptions at Beads to Live By. So keep your eye out for those announcements. Sign up for newsletter at Cassandra's site, which is the Beads to Live By website. And she will let us know when that is available. Because it is only available every 3 months to be able to subscribe. I'm going to just check my length here and see if I need to add more or even take this one off for my size, because I'm feeling like it might end up being a little bit long because of that. But I also have this big chonker on the other side, and actually that's going to be perfect. That is going to be perfect. So I'm just going to put 1 11O here on the end. Let's move that out of the way. So that was a little bit in the way. And I'm going to crimp one end of my wire, just like I did with the others. Go back through my crimp tube. Make sure I've got a decent sized loop. Not too big, not too small, just large enough to put a jump ring through. And we're going to center that in the concavity on my crimper. Give a little smush to smush down the corners. And then rotate around. There we go. Nice smooth ball crimp. There we go. Make sure that we've got enough wire for crimping. This one, I almost went and got another 11O there, but instead I'm just going to get my crimp on. And this one again is going through my tube, and that is okay with me. Whoop, but I don't want my crimp to end up in there. The hole on my tube, crimp tube, crimp tube. There we go. Whew. Yeah, the hole on this is a little on the big side, so it, my crimp tube went through that. It's crazy. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and do some crimping here before I lose my crimp tube. Actually, I need that to be a little bit smaller. There we go. Alright, crimp before we lose the whole thing. It's kind of getting swallowed up, but that is okay. Because the jump ring will keep it from sliding off. Also, the loop I think is too big for it to slide off. Alright, and there we go. That is bracelet number, wait a minute, how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we've got 6 and 7 left to go. We are just speeding along, my friends. Once you've made the tube, the rest is just simples. Alright, so next. This was a bead mix that I got from Danielle Wickes. I will find the name of that bead mix and put it in the description below. She may have restocked it or not. I don't know. I'm not in charge of her inventory. But on this one, I'm actually going to be using some bead caps as well. And these ones just have kind of a wider opening. So these will fit not completely inside of it, but it will just cap it off and give me a little bit more of a finished look with that. And these were just some flower beads that Danielle sent out as a thank you with some of her orders. And so I thought I would pull some of these out, add them to my little design. We've got some blues and greens and maybe a couple of blues and greens. Like that. I feel like that's going to look great together with all of those. I wonder if I should borrow, with the brown colored bead in here, if I should borrow one of these from the Beads to Live By subscription. I think it actually is going to go really well with it. So I'm just going to add that one in here. Just one of these guys. like that for my little focal bead. Alright, let's take some of these. I'm going to use the cream colored beads as a little bit of a spacer, but my wire is going to be this turquoise color to call out this turquoise here. Let's grab some silver crimps. I literally just had them right here with me. Nope, there they are. Found them. And we'll need a clasp. Okay, yep, and that clasp works. And some jump rings. Alright, so let's get the wire out and start stringing. Gonna start with the bead cap on the end. We're going to go through the tube with the wire. And this guy's going to go up on top. And is this 11/0 too small? Nope, it is not too small. Okay. So that's going to be right there. Boom, boom, boom. Hey. There we go. So now let's get these beads strung on in between these flowers. And they're not the biggest flowers, so I don't know if I'm going to need more than just a single one of these seed beads. Let's find out once we've got the all of them strung, if I need to take them off and add more beads between them, because I can definitely do that. It is entirely possible that we'll need 3 beads between them for each of these. Kind of like I did with the other ones. But I might be mistaken about that. And the longer I'm looking at this, the more I'm realizing that yes, I do need like 3 between each one. Yep. Yeah, I do like that spacing better. You are always free to change your mind about things if you don't like the way that they're looking. But yeah, I do love a good bead mix, and this is such a great way to incorporate bead mixes into your designs. It's to just make a little beaded component that you can add to your things. 1, 2, 3. And it's a good way to get started with bead weaving, because once you've got that, it can become something to build confidence with bead weaving and using seed beads. This might be long enough. Let me double check. If not, I've got an extra bead that I can use. Oop. Yeah, actually, that is long enough. Just like that. Alright. So let's get this crimped, and let's add our findings to the end. There we go. If you wanted to, you could glue these in, but you're going to want to do it probably just around the edges so that you can still string it onto things. I would be hesitant to glue it just because there's so much potential for making a mess or gluing it wrong or gumming it up so that you can't actually string it onto things. But that's just me. But yeah, I will definitely put a link to Danielle Wickes' website where she sells a lot of fantastic bead mixes. She comes up with like a new one every month, and they are so much fun to work with and use. She also is a fantastic instructor and has a great YouTube channel. I've joined her a few times for Seed Bead Saturdays on her channel. And she's just one of the most amazing people that I know. Super happy to be able to call her my friend. So I'll put a link to her channel as well if you want to check out some of her things that she does. There's just going to be a ton of links down in the description, guys. So, you know, if you're watching on TV, it might be worth opening up on the computer just to see what is in there, where you can find more info about some of the things that I've made and I'm working with. Alright. Let's get this crimped. Yeah, I'm really happy that I had these unstrung by the time I did that, because it just was very fortuitous. I didn't think about adding this until after I had already started on this, because we have this dark brown bead in the mix, and that means that this brown bit here just meshes so well with that bead mix. Fortuitous isn't how it's pronounced, it's fortuitous. But that's how I always pronounced it in my head. So do you guys have things that you've mispronounced your whole life, and even after learning how they're actually pronounced, you still say it the wrong way, especially in your head? Because boy, do I have a lot of those. Oh boy. Alright, my friends. One more. And this one is going to be an interesting little bit. Alright. Because it's going to be the two strands. And I'm not using any bead caps or even little beads on the ends of those. I could if I wanted to. We're just going to get them strung on. Let me get these beads out of the way. But yeah, I made 2 equal length tubes. They're going to end up being right next to each other. And then we've got these 2-hole pyramid beads. And I'm going to need to put some space between these. Actually, are they the same length? Yes, they are. Okay. So, in order to do that, I've got the seed beads that I made these with. Again, these were in my May Adornable Elements Seed Beads of the Month subscription. There are 8 different seed bead selections, and this is 4 of them. And I think I actually do need to have some sort of bead caps on here. So let me just see what I've got here that I can put these on or in. What about some bell bead caps? Are these going to be too big though? Let's find out. Will they be too crowded next to each other? Nope, I don't like that. How about if I just grab some beads that are similar color to maybe these greens? Let's see what I've got handy in my stash. Actually, would that work? Yes, it does. These disc beads from my Gemstone Orphanage box are going to be just perfect for this. All right. Now for this, let's grab some antique brass wire. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and cut off some wire to begin with, because I'm going to be stringing both at the same time. And to keep the beads from sliding off while I'm doing that, I grab myself a bead stopper. Space out the wire a little bit. Get the wire in a couple of different areas there. That way that will hold both ends of my wire while I'm doing my stringing. So let's get the first tube on the first wire. Okay. Add this to that end. That is such a good match for that green, I think. And then these. All right. Just going to go down this row, adding one of each of these 4 seed beads. And we'll find out if that is enough space between them once we've got all of these strung on. And now I need to decide if this is going to be up or down, but I'm going to be putting each wire through one hole, separate holes in my 2-hole bead, and swinging them along like that. Alright, same order to add one of each of these. See how it gives you kind of an ombre look on there. Let's do the next one. See, this one's just a little bit different from all of the rest because we are doing 2 strands at once. This is like the advanced option. That is so pretty. actually. I love that. We are almost done with this bracelet bash, my friends. I don't think I'm going to be done making these, though. I have so many other of my bead subscriptions that I want to go back to and make some of these, especially my my Sam's Bead Box ones, because I always get those bead mixes, and I love them. And I still have so many of those beads left. Because it's hard to use up an entire giant thing of seed beads. Unless you're doing some pretty serious seed beading. Alright, friends. Let's get these next two guys on here. Look at those colors. Aren't they pretty? Ugh, love this. And here's the thing. Oof. I might need to add more seed beads on the end just to make it long enough. Or better than that, maybe we'll just make sure we use like an extender chain. I think that might be the way that I do it, actually, because that way I won't have to make things awkward with the rest of the bracelet. Yeah, okay. No, this is the way it's gonna be. Alright, let me add all 4 colors again. And these are the same colors that we have on here. Right. Now let me check my length. Alright, so it's a little bit short, but like I said, I can add an extender chain. And I think that I'm going to be happy with that. So what I'm going to want to do is grab another bead stopper and just clamp down one of these strands. And then crimp this strand. I'm going to make a little loop with my crimps. And there are my crimps. Let's do some gold ones. I think gold's a good color for this. You know what? Before I do that, I do not have a lot of wire on this end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these ends a little bit further along on this wire so that I can scooch everything and crimp the other side. Because I don't want to crimp this end too close and not have enough wire for crimping on this end. So, now that I've got that done, let's crimp this end. crimp the end of my wire. And I'm going to be doing 4 crimps. This is crimp number 1. And then let's do crimp number 2. Just comparing it to this first crimp that I did to see if they're the same size. There we go, that's better. Now, scooch those down there. And they are a little off on their own, but that's totally fine because I'm going to crimp this one right here. It's going to be a little awkward to get to because it's so close to this. I might actually do one more pass of these just to get myself a little extra room on this side between the 2 strands. There we go. So now let's get this one crimped. Make sure that you're not squishing the seed bead next to the crimp before you squeeze down. You want to make sure there's a little bit of room. If you need to use your fingernail to make that space, you can. I usually will. And that one I didn't need to, but if I do need to, I will absolutely do that. Okay. Now this one, let's get that crimped. Let's make sure there's enough space. Let's make sure my loop isn't too big or little. There we go. That is about right. Make sure I'm not squishing any beads, because you can absolutely break these seed beads with your magical crimper. If you chomp down on it. There we go. Alright, now let's put these together. Grab a couple of jump rings. Now the first jump ring, I'm going to open it up and put both loops through and then close it. Like so. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Right. So then I'm going to put on a jump ring on one side and then a clasp on the other, like so. There we go. There you have a little bracelet with 2 peyote tubes and some 2-hole beads. There we go, and that was with using my Adornable Elements Beads of the Month Club subscription. Let me clean up these seed beads real quick and I'll pull out all of the other bracelets that we made today for one last look. And once more, I will have all sorts of links and information in the description below. And I just put that in the wrong tube. But that's okay, I'll sort it out later. This is what happens when you are busy talking and not paying attention to things. You make little mistakes, but that's alright, because you can always fix them. Okay, I'm going to move that out of the way, just because I would like for us to see all of these bracelets. Alright, so the first one that we made this tube together. The other tubes I made on my own. And then we strung up this fantastic bracelet using some beads from the Gemstone Orphanage Danielle Wickes Naked Baby. And then I've got this from my April Adornable Elements Beads of the Month Club. That's what these seed beads came from. But then I've got some beads that I added from my stash because they just really go great with these colors. And then we have this one that I made using the French Garden kit from Softflex that they had for their spring fling TGBE. And then we have this made with the Spa Day Sam's Bead Box. And this one was with the Curated Collections from Beads to Live By for May. The June subscriptions have not been sent out yet, so I am looking forward to that though. I've seen some of that, and again on Wednesday the 11th I will be joining Cassandra to play around with more of these beads. And then the next was with this from Danielle Wickes, and I will have the name of that mix, and if it's still in stock, a link to it in the description below. And then this was with my May Adornable Elements Beads of the Month Club. And I added some 2-hole beads from that same subscription. And there we have our 7 bracelets for this bracelet bash using peyote tubes in an asymmetrical bracelet design. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you have some kind of inspiration from this, whether you make something exactly like one of the ones that I've made, or you just want to give doing a little bit of bead weaving a try and making a little tube to create your own design with. That would be fantastic. Until next time, my friends, happy beading.